Hi guys, we'll be starting in just a minute.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. So, a great evening, everyone. Hope you are doing well. So, ACM IGDTU brings to you ACM Hour of Code week, in which we promote computer science amongst our peers, juniors, and enthusiasts like you to explore this amazing world of CS. Right? Without further delay, let's talk a bit about the administrative issues. The first is that towards the end of the session, we'll be circulating a Google form, right? The people who fill the form will be actually getting the certificates as well as all the resources that we'll be sharing. The second part is that we plan to keep the session interactive. So if you guys are willing, please volunteer to answer questions that are asked, right? So without any further delay, let me share my screen and start deep learning concepts. Please let me know, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Great. Okay. So in today's hour of code, we shall be unleashing the mystical world of deep learning, and you will gain insights about a super awesome library called fast.ai. Okay. So without further delay, I request you all to please open your browsers and log in to these skills are literally the top list in demand skills at the moment. If you do not believe me, I have a special guest with us and he shall be proving my point.
So robotics, medicine, and everything in between. You'll learn fundamentals of this field and how you can build some of these incredible algorithms. In fact, this entire speech and video are not real and were created using deep learning and artificial intelligence. And in this class, you'll learn how. It has been an honor to speak with you today, and I hope you enjoy the course.
Hi everybody, and welcome to MIT 6S191.
Amazing, right? So that's the power of DL and AI, right? So finally, let's move forward and discuss the agenda of today's session. First, we'll be dealing with what is exactly the difference between AI, ML, and DL. We'll talk about history. We'll talk about the working theory of DL. We'll also talk about the analogy with human brain. Next, we'll talk about neural nets, the need for deep learning, DL frameworks and library, the applications of DL, and next we'll talk about the limitations that we have in DL, definitely the resources for you, how to get started, and a super cool discussion on the library fast.ai. If time permits, we'll also have a debate. Finally, raise your hands if you have been confused between these three terms, AI, ML, and DL. My buddies, you can lower them down. I can't really see them, right? Let's talk about AI first. AI is a broader concept. As the name suggests, intelligence is something we associate with humans. Okay. Like humans can read, humans can decide, humans can take decisions. Similarly, artificial intelligence can be thought of as, enabling human intelligence to machines. So whenever a machine completes tasks that are based on algorithms, such an intelligent behavior is what we call artificial intelligence. Now, we divide artificial intelligence learning into three parts. The first is your artificial narrow intelligence, in which what happens is that it refers to the AI systems that can perform only a specific task, like autonomously like a human. But these machines cannot do anything more than what they have been programmed to do, right? So that is why it has a narrow scope. The examples include AlphaGo. Google's DeepMind's AlphaGo system won the most complicated game that was ever invented, and it was actually able to beat Lee Sedol, who was 18 times world champion straight, 4 out of 5 times. This concept is not new. Back in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue was the first computer to beat human beings in chess, right? So you see that these computers or these machines are limited in scope. They are good at performing a certain task. The second, we come to artificial general intelligence, which is like when your AI machines can learn, practice, and perceive the functions just the way humans do it. Your examples include your virtual bots and your, say, Siri, etc. The next is an interesting one, which is your artificial super intelligence. And this is a concept where your computer capabilities, will be surpassing the human abilities. That means आपका जो computer होगा, वो human से ज़्यादा अच्छा perform करने लग जाएगा. This is definitely a hypothetical situation, but we still have examples like Sophia the robot. And did I mention this amazing man, Hiroshi Ishiguro? He actually made his own RoboCopy. And if you guys want to learn more about it, you have links to these and you can refer to them in the resources. Now let's move on to machine learning part, which is like an interesting one. And machine learning, let's get to the root words. Machine learning, making the machine learn by, say, themselves and predicting the outcomes. So in simple words, as I've written, that machine learning is all about learning from the past, applying it in the present, and predicting the future. We have covered the machine learning part extensively in previous session yesterday. So I'll just like to brief you about one concept, which is your no free lunch theorem. So what happens is that usually in ML, if you guys have worked, we have to try and evaluate using different models. Now, ever thought why we have to do that? So the reason is illustrated by this theorem, no free lunch theorem, which actually states that no one model can work best for every problem. The reason is, the point is the assumptions for one great model may not be the same for another. That is the reason we have to try multiple models to find out the one that suits us the best. So I hope the AI part and the ML part are finally clear to you, right? Finally, let's move on to the topic of the day, deep learning. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning where you have something called artificial neural networks, and these algorithms are inspired by brain, and they learn from large amounts of data. If you see the deep learning concept, it actually mimics the workings of human brains, the way our human brains process data for use in detecting objects, recognizing speech, translating, say, your speech recognition, and finally taking decisions, right? So, I have a question for you. Ever thought why deep learning has a word called deep in it? Are there any volunteers who would like to answer this question? I'll wait for like 10 seconds. Do we have any volunteers who would like to answer this question? Why we are using the word deep?
It consists of various projects process and to encounter the result. That's why.
Yeah, a part of it is correct. Any other explanation if anyone would like to give?
Maybe it works out how the machine recognizes the machine learning algorithms.
That's also a good point. So, in simple words, I'll just give you the point that usually deep is considered, associated with something that's complicated. Just please mention, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So, usually deep is something we associate with something that's, complicated or secretive. So the 2 points that my fellows have mentioned are correct. But you also have something that in deep learning, we have the concept of hidden layers, which actually do the processing. We'll understand this better using the animations, right? So thank you for volunteering. Let's talk briefly about history, right? So, CR, the concept of deep learning is not new. It dates back to 1940s where people were actually formulating or creating models like for neural networks using mathematics and algorithms, right? But can anyone volunteer now that why now it's happening that this field is gaining so much momentum?
Due
I'll
to
again
large
wait for
vol-
like
due to large
sorry.
volume of data,
Hmm?
due to large volume of data available and machine power.
Great. So yes, that summarizes exactly the point. Your first point is software, which is like, deep learning algorithms are hungry for data. जितना आप data उन्हें provide करोगे, they are really great at giving you accuracies. But in past, we didn't have really great huge amounts of data like you have ImageNet data set, right? Today we have good data sets and plus we can generate them as well, right? So that's the reason why this field is gaining momentum. The second point you mentioned was that processing, that is your hardware concept. So now these algorithms, because they are very computationally expensive, they require like great infrastructure, GPUs, processing unit. So past may hardware was not that much good, but now we have great solutions to that. So these are two basic reasons why this field now is gaining momentum. I hope this is clear to you guys.
Yes.
Thank you. So now, quickly let's move towards the similarity between neurons and neural network. Have you ever wondered why is it called neural network? So the reason is because deep learning algorithms are inspired by human brains. In human brains, we have a concept, we have something called neuron. Okay. In the neural networks, again, we have something called neurons. Now, what these neurons do, these neurons take an input signal, they process it like the CPU, and they pass this output through a cable-like structure, which is called channel, to the other connected neurons, right? So this is how a neuron would work, which is your basic processing core unit. Okay. Now let's talk about how exactly these neurons work. I'll give you like 3 seconds to read this meme, or let me read it for you. So Albert Einstein in his statement says that insanity is in doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But machine learning is all about this. So it sounds cool, right? Now you are seeing this and hearing this meme. Okay. Now our sense organs send the visual and the sound information to your brain. Brain will now receive this information and will decide whether you have to laugh or you don't have to laugh. Now this decision is taken up by a set of neurons, and each neuron will get activated when, say, a specific criteria is met. In reality, the picture is not that simple. We have like 10 to the power 11, or you can say 100 billion neurons working parallelly, interconnected, to actually decide whether you have to laugh or not. Okay? So in simple words, what you can say is that your sense organs pass this information to your first lower layers. Okay? Then the neurons process it, and the output of the process is passed on to the next layer in a hierarchical manner. In this, some neurons will fire and some won't, and this process goes on until it results in a final response. See, I'll use a laser point to explain you. For example, this is your first neuron. It will activate when your visual is funny. This is your second neuron. It will activate when your speech is funny. The third is activated when your text is funny. For example, we have something called threshold value. Now it says that laugh if 2 out of 3 neurons are activated. So you can see that 3 are activated. So the final output would be laughter. You must be wondering why I am, emphasizing on this, how brain works, because this is the exact concept how neural networks, the neurons work, right? So I hope this part is clear to you guys. Please give me a yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so now I have an animation to show you guys. Please let me know if the animation is working nicely. Okay.
Let's understand basically how neural networks work. Say we have 3 different shapes. Basically, neural networks have neurons, which are actually the core processing unit. The first layer is actually your input layer. The last layer is actually your output layer, which predicts our final output. In between, we have hidden layers, which are responsible for computations, like feature extraction. Let's take this example of a circle, which is basically of 28 plus 28 pixels, making it 784 pixels. Now, each 784 pixels will be fed into neurons, and these neurons are connected to the next layer by channels, right? And these channels have associated numerical value called weights with them. Now, these inputs are multiplied by these weights, and their sum is sent as input to the next layer. Also, each neuron is connected to a numerical value called bias, and which is added to their sum. This input is basically fed into activation function, which is responsible for deciding whether the neuron will be fired or activated or not. And if it's activated, then these neurons will transfer the data to the next layer, and this way the data flows. This is what we call forward propagation. Okay. Now what happens in the output layer is that the neuron with the highest value determines the output. These are basically probabilities that whether the shape is square, a circle, or a triangle. And in our case, the model has predicted the shape as square, which is definitely a wrong prediction, right? So now what do we do? So basically, this output is actually fed or compared with the actual outcome, and we have to minimize the deviation. This information will be actually transferred backwards, which is what we call backward propagation, and then the weights will be adjusted accordingly. And this forward and back propagation will actually be performed iteratively till our model is able to correctly predict the outcome of our shape, which is circle.
So guys, did you understand how neural networks actually work? Please give me a yes. If you have any doubts, I can play the video again and explain it in my words again. Just give me a yes or a no.
Yeah, the chat says it's clear.
Great. So let's move forward. This is just the theory part of whatever I have, discussed in the video, right? And now let's talk about neural nets. Basically, neural nets, we have really options like CNN, RNN, GANs. We'll focus on CNNs and RNNs for today's tutorial, right? So CNNs basically stand for Convolution Neural Network. This is a concept, or this is a deep neural network which was designed for image analysis. And we have like two basic concepts called convolution and pooling. Now, what happens is that in convolution, we are actually moving our convolution over pixels. Okay. If you're not understanding it, no problem. The point is that whenever we're analyzing a picture, we are actually finding or extracting features out of it. The convolution layer is responsible for that, right? Then we also have a concept of pooling, which is responsible for reducing the dimensions. Great. We'll just cover it superficially, and let's understand this through a simple example. See, for example, you have to recognize a face. Okay. Now, just as we discussed that in neural networks, we have layers, right, of neurons. The first layer, which is your basic layer, will actually focus on extracting the low level features like your edges and corners. You can say this layer, right? The second layer will form feature groups, that is your nose or mouth or eyes. Okay. The third layer or advanced layers will now be able to detect high level objects like faces, etc. Right? So this is how the concept of CNN works. This is very simply I have put. The underlying principle is a bit complex. Now let's talk about RNNs. This is like an application you must be aware of. So you must be wondering how the Google's autocomplete works, right? How you just type something and you get options. So the underlying principle is basically your recurrent neural network, which is like what happens is that Google has a collection of large volumes of most frequently occurring consecutive words. Like you have Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New Jersey, San Francisco, right? Now this data is actually fed into the recurrent neural network. Now this network will actually analyze the data by finding sequences of words which actually occur together or frequently together, like we just discussed San Francisco, right? And then it will predict the next word. So like what is the best food to eat in New York?
You're not audible.
Amandeep, I think you're disconnected, or you have poor network.
Hi guys, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
When you were talking about how Google search engine work.
Okay.
How does it
Nihal,
predict autocomplete?
okay, I'll
Like-
just repeat. I'll just repeat once again, right?
Yeah,
My screen is visible, right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how Google engine works? This is an application you must be aware of, right? So what happens is that Google has this collection of large volumes of most frequently occurring consecutive words. Now, examples include like San Francisco, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, right? Now, this database will be actually fed into this recurrent neural network. This network will analyze, okay, the data by finding sequences of words occurring frequently together, like San Francisco. So, अगर आप San लिखोगे तो Francisco अपने आप आपको suggestions में आ जाएगा. This is the same concept. So when you write what is the best food to eat in Las Vegas, right? So it will auto complete it as Vegas. Okay. So, and forgot to mention that definitely Las Vegas is known for its fine dining. Now let's talk about the need for DL. So deep learning, one word is actually accuracy. So DL algorithms have been achieving higher accuracies than their other algorithm counterparts. The reason is that with increase in data, the performance of deep learning algorithms also increases, right? So that is the reason your accuracy is a great factor. Now let's talk about the confusion between ML or DL. When you should use ML, when you should use DL, right? So the foremost thing is when your data is large, when your data is huge, then you can go for deep learning algorithms. If your data is like small, so you should prefer your traditional machine learning algorithms, right? The second concept is that deep learning techniques need to have high-end infrastructure. We just discussed that hardware components काफी अच्छे चाहिए होते हैं इन्हें. Plus, they actually require time for modeling the data. Like it can range from a few hours to a few weeks. Personally, I have experiences of training my data on 20 plus hours, right? So the third point is when you are lacking feature extraction knowledge, right? Then deep learning techniques can come handy, because in deep learning, you don't really have to do feature extraction, because that is what deep learning algorithms do, okay, in the computational part. The last point is that deep learning is really shining because it's able to come up with solutions to complex problems like image classification, natural language processing, and speech recognition. And there's a huge road that is need to be paved even now, right? Now let's talk about the deep learning frameworks and libraries. Okay, so you must have heard of TensorFlow, which is Google's framework. Then you have PyTorch, you have Torch, and a very specific cool library, fast.ai, which we'll be discussing today as well. Briefly talking about the applications, right? So your applications range from your Google Home to your Amazon Alexa. Then your chatbots and virtual assistants are actually based on this concept. Even the recommendation systems of your YouTube, Netflix, and say Spotify are basically based on this underlying principle. Okay. Not to mention the driverless driverless cars that you have, that actually have the underlying principle as deep learning and specifically computer vision, right? Then deep learning is paving paths for a lot of development in healthcare sector, like detection of tumors to predicting the prescribing medicines based on your medical data. These all things are being done. Then you have something called face recognition, which is a great application. And even you can play around with images, which is your picture colorization or filtering and these kind of stuff. So these are just some applications that I have listed, right? Finally, let's talk about the limitations. Everything has its pros and cons. And the biggest consequence of deep learning is your data set availability. If you have a great data set, then your performance will be great. But if you do not have a great data set or huge data set, your performance may suffer from personal experiences that I'm telling you. The second part is definitely your hardware. You require good GPUs. You require good high-end infrastructure. Let's talk about the third and the fourth limitations, which are really interesting, because the first is basically your bias. Remember, we added a bias element. So since the models learn by data, if the data is biased, then your results will be biased. So we need to make sure that our data set is diverse. If you guys want to read the solutions, how we can make the data diverse or how to remove bias, I have included the link to it. Okay. Let's finally talk about the fourth limitation, which is an interesting one. And let me cite an example for you guys. So back in 2017, a strange self-driving car was released in New Jersey. Now, definitely it's awesome. Like we are seeing a driverless car driving on roads. But the point was that that car didn't follow even one instruction that was given by the programmer who was, controlling it. Instead, it relied on an algorithm that was taught to itself by actually seeing how humans drive. It's impressive when you're talking about the technical part of it, but morally, what if something unexpected happens? Even the engineers who designed it were not sure why this machine is behaving like this. So this black box concept in AI and deep learning is something which is a big limitation. And this field is really a research field, and if you guys want to take up research, you can work on this field as well. Finally, let's talk about the resources. So you have like great resources. If you want to do a course, please go ahead with this Coursera course on deep learning by Andrew Ng. It's an awesome course, and Mr. Barack Obama has already given you introduction and advised you for taking up this MIT course. If you want to work on computer vision, the Stanford course is great, and you can also refer to blogs like MIT's Technology Review is a great blog, right? And towards AI, towards data science, these are great blogs to work on and brush up your knowledge. So with this, actually, I would like to conclude introduction to deep learning. If you guys want to connect with me, you have these handles of mine, and you guys can connect with me. So with this, I would like to hand over the stage to Muskan to take you further with the topic of introduction to fast.ai.
Yeah, that was a great session. Thank you, Amandeep.
Great.
So I'll start now. Let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Great. So first of all, I would like to thank Amandeep for such a great and informative session. This one will be relatively lighter, I feel, because this is like an introduction to a library. So it becomes a little more specific. And please let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow for everyone, and we can manage accordingly. So this session is about this library called fast.ai, and it was released towards the end of 2016, more like 2017, and it's a fairly new library. And I don't know how many of you have heard about it. So first, I want to know the count of how many people here have heard about this library ever. We can have a zero count as well if no one has heard about it, but let me know. Okay, people are saying no. All right. So I hope I can like tell you some interesting and cool things about this library that encourages you to study and learn more about it. So first of all, this library is built upon PyTorch, which is built upon Python, and I hope everyone knows that. This library is built keeping the modern deep learning practices in mind and the deep modern challenges. Like for example, how Amandeep mentioned that we need a lot of data and a lot of hardware, and how it takes so much time in computing. Now, FastAI's main goal is to reduce that, to reduce the amount of data you need, to reduce the amount of math you need to know behind deep learning, and their entire library is GPU optimized. That means whenever you write a function, you specifically don't have to call GPU and write the CUDA command, or and it just automatically picks up on GPU and it starts working from the first minute, right? And it is super convenient to make state-of-the-art models in like 5 lines of code. Now, what all does this library do? So we obviously have computer vision, we have language, we have tabular data, we have collaborative filtering. Basically, all primary deep learning applications are covered. And if you find anything that's not covered, you can somehow find a way to incorporate it amongst roughly these four domains, right? So let's move on. Now, why FastAI above all other languages and frameworks that you've heard of. Now, I think most of you would have used TensorFlow and Keras for deep learning and for building your models. So Keras is a high-level API, right? It gives you very little control on the parameters, on your model arrangement, on the model architecture. FastAI can do that, can be a high-level API for you. It can at the same time be a mid-level or a low-level API. Like since FastAI is built on PyTorch, I don't know how many of you have ever used PyTorch, but it makes it super convenient to build a neural network from scratch, like build a neuron, write the code for forward propagation, write the code for backward propagation without actually writing down the math, right? There are functions that you can call, or you can write down the math. That's completely your call. So FastAI gives you all levels of APIs for how much control you want on your model. So, for example, now in the last 2 years, about in 2018, in the research industry, the number of papers that were published on deep learning, approximately 80% use TensorFlow. But in 2019, 2020, the number of papers that have been published, the usage of TensorFlow has gone down from 80% to about 20, and PyTorch has come up from about 20% to 80%, and that's just because how much control PyTorch gives to you on your model. And FastAI is built for everyone, whether you know code, whether you know maths, or you don't know any of these. FastAI can help you with everything, right? And okay, another thing about FastAI is the documentation, which is one of the most amazing and convenient documentations I have seen in the recent past. And their community, they have a Discord server, they have a forum where everyone's constantly active and talking about FastAI and talking about the new applications. And it has been proven, there are actually Kaggle kernels that have proved that FastAI has given faster and more accurate results than TensorFlow and Keras. And yeah, those are the primary two libraries for deep learning, right? So I hope some of you have this question about how can you learn FastAI. So primary source for learning FastAI is their official course, which is at this website. It's also available on YouTube on their founder, which is Jeremy Howard, his YouTube channel, Free Code Camp YouTube channel, and they've all published the same videos. So it's the best source to learn FastAI. They have their official book from which Jeremy Howard teaches, which is available entirely as a Jupyter notebook that I'll share with you guys towards the end of the session so you can learn from that as well. And you don't need any math background to get into FastAI. And from the first lesson that you watch, within the first 30 minutes, you train a convolutional neural network for image recognition and achieve amazing results, right? And another interesting fact about FastAI is their founder, which is Jeremy Howard and Rachel Thomas. Jeremy Howard did not pursue a technical degree in his bachelor's. He has a BA philosophy. And it was only in his PhD that he started feeling an inclination towards AI and deep learning. And that's when he started looking into things. And this was back around like the starting of 2000s when this was fairly new. And so he got into deep learning AI. He had multiple startups. He tells you all about himself in those videos where you can study from. And even this FastAI that he created, he's written the code from scratch of every single thing. So he's great. He knows what he's doing, and he can teach. There's no one that can teach you FastAI better than himself, better than Jeremy Howard himself, right? So now I will show you a Jupyter Notebook walkthrough of a simple FastAI model, and you guys can let me know if you want me to like execute the model here or not. So first of all, I study FastAI on Paperspace and I highly recommend it. It's this cloud platform with like small capacity for free GPU and CPU. and it's a great server. They have made a container for FastAI where you get the entire book, which is this. You can see these chapters. This is the entire book. So you don't have to buy anything. It's here. It has all the code. It has all the theory, and it's honestly the best resource I've come across. Right? So let's move on to this notebook that I've created for you guys. So I've since my PPT has so many office references, so I decided I'll do a office character classifier with you guys. And I've like already created the notebook, so it's just for you guys to see, right? So let's see. This cell is a simple web scraping, 4 lines of code. Again, I found this on the FastAI forums, and obviously it's amazing because FastAI. And these are simple things that if you want to see one of the images in our data set, I'll like explain side by side. Let me know if it's going too fast so I can slow down and explain each cell in detail. Okay. So this is where we define our classes. We define a path for our images, which is demo images 1, as I have defined here, right? Then we move on. FastAI has in fact even more modified this function, which is get image files from the pathlib function, which is a function available in Python, but FastAI has modified it to give you a count of the number of the number of variables in the list that it's returning, right? So yeah, this is where we begin FastAI. Data loaders. Data loaders is a high-level API in FastAI. What it does is it uses a data block. A data block is just to simply tell the model what kind of data are we going to be using. Like here we have described how we use an image block and a category block. So this is a categorical problem, and images is the kind of data we need. This is to split into the validation set. This is our data augmentation. And now we create data loaders. And from data loaders, we can see, we can run this show batch function to see what are our images in the data loaders, right? And we get them with the label without writing any specific line that we want a label from the category block or from their folder or working directory or whatever. We don't have to write anything. It's so simple. It's made easy for everyone. Now, for today's session, instead of writing a neural network from scratch, I thought a better approach would be to show you transfer learning model, which I think is like recommended in most places where it's just not feasible to create a neural network from scratch, because you should use what's already been created, which is such computer vision models, right? So we create a CNN learner with our data loaders. Select ResNet 50 as the architecture. We can select any. There's a whole list of architectures on their documentation site. We can select any of these, right? But I've selected ResNet 50 for today. And then we train our model. And you can see the time it took. It's 12 seconds, and it's honestly, in fact, less than 12 seconds, right? And then we plot a confusion matrix to see our accuracy. Now you can see the accuracy is 85%, but also note that we took just 150 images of each category, and that's insanely less amount of data. And that's the beauty of FastAI, that can give you great results in very low data. And in fact, we haven't even cleaned our data yet. This is data that has noise and that has issues right now. It's not been cleaned, but it still gives you 85%. Right? Then we plot a classification matrix. This is a show results function where we can see a random sample taken from our validation set of what our model predicts. Right? So this is where our model is wrong, where it should have been Jim, but it predicted Michael. So, okay, our model has some issues that we need to correct. Now, another example of the best practices that I was referring to is this learning rate dot find function. Now, this is something that was scientists discovered this about like a few years ago, where they run the model, they run it on a mini batch on the entire model and increase the learning rate stepwise. So you can see this graph. The learning rate is increased in steps, and they run the entire model and just run one mini batch per iteration. And they see in which iteration does the model learn the most, right? So if you guys would like know a little about neural networks, you would know how important learning rate is, and that it's used in gradient descent, and it's literally a very important factor in any network. So we see this plot, right? And then we get some suggested learning rates. FastAI does this much for you, that they tell you this is where the learning rate was minimum and this is where it was the steepest, which is here. So we want something where it was the steepest, because that means in that iteration our model learned the most. So we pick a value closer to that and we train our model further and we improve our accuracy. Now, I told you that we haven't yet cleaned our data, right? So we need to do that. For that, we need to see where our model is faulting. What are the examples of images where it's not giving us good results? So, yeah, sorry. So we use this simple plot top losses function, and I select 4, figure size, very basic Python stuff, and we see that this image, it's not even either of the 3 that we need, right? It's neither Michael, Jim, nor Dwight. It's some other character. So this is noise in our data. This image is predicted as Dwight, but it's actually Michael. It's because clearly there's Dwight written on the top. But anyways, this is again an image that we don't need because Michael is just so far away in the image, right? This image is where our model is not working fine. It's predicting as Michael, but it's actually Dwight. And you see, we have our reference. This is how we have to read this image. And I did not type any code to get this reference. It's built in FastAI, right? So this is an example of the image where it failed, which is clearly something that we need to remove from our data set. Now, coming to image cleaning. This is one of the coolest things I think about FastAI, which is an image classifier cleaner. They have built in this user interface inside their library, which is built entirely with IPython widgets, where you can get to see your data, choose what category you want to see, what set of data you want to see, train or validation. And since it's obviously like selected randomly, you can see what we want, right? And this error is because I haven't run this right now. It's an older run, right? And then we can select what we want to keep, what we want to discard. So wait, can you guys see the options, which is keep, delete, shift it to a different folder if you're of your data set. And you make these changes here. You just select it. It's like so easy to just select it, and you have to run this cell, and it will delete the ones that you've selected. Delete. It will change the ones that you've selected to change, and it will obviously not do anything for the ones you've decided to keep, right? So now after you've done this, obviously you have to go back. You have to retrain your model. You have to like see if the accuracy increases anywhere, and it probably will because you've cleaned your data now, right? So after you've done that, I'm going to show you a mini deployment, which is not a full deploy, it's just a prototyping method, right? So has anyone here ever used Voila for deploying their machine learning models? I hope people were listening and will answer. Has anyone ever used Voila for deployment? All right, people say no. Okay, so I'm going to teach you that today, and I hope you learn something. So simple exporting the model, it's saved as a .pickle file. So I hope you guys know this. The pickle file includes the model architecture and the trained parameters, right? So we don't need the entire notebook now. We just need our export.pickle file. All right. And this, I've just kept an example here to see that you can use the predict function to predict any of the images from your data set. And it gives you such detailed answers. It's given you Michael, which was the name that you selected. It's given you returned a tensor for you. Yeah, FastAI works on tensors. It does not work on NumPy arrays, right? It works on tensors because that's what PyTorch works on. And it's returned you a tensor of the probability of it being each of these class. So it's 9.99 here, which is like 0.99 probability here. So that's the 2 because it's indexed from 0, 1, 2. That's our 2, right? And if we want to see the image, we have to just do image.open and we can see that it is indeed Michael, right? And now let's go back to our deployment. So we've exported our pickle file. Now we start a new notebook, which is this. You have to run these cells, which is you have to install Voila. You have to install this Jupyter server extension that enables Voila. You see the symbol on my notebook, that's because of installed Voila. And you'll see that whenever you do this, right? So yeah, let's get back. We take the path, which is this current working directory. We load the model export.pickle, which we just, so we need to take care of the directory from where we're loading our model. Now these are some IPython widgets, which is button upload. This is like a name to the widget, but the widget is file upload, right? This is what it's called. Then there's another widget for button, which we'll use for classification. There's another for output that will show our image. There's another for label that will write some text, right? And to like show our prediction, which is that's why I think label prediction. This is our function. So I don't know. I think people would have generally worked on some form of development, like web development or app development. So there are functions like on click do this or on observe do this, right? So this is on click classify. We name it this way, but we can name it whatever because it's Python, right? We have to just use this on click with a button later. So what we do here is whenever we click on click classify and something's been changed, we load the image and we predict it, right? We predict the image. Obviously we display the image and then we predict it, and then we put the predictions in a label and we write down the description of the label like this, which is, so you'll see the text, which is prediction, के आगे pred लिखा होगा, and probability will give you the probability which is maximum because we don't need to see all the probabilities, right? And to see how it looks like is this, which is display VBox widgets, and this is this is how, so they're buttons, right? You see how when I hover over them, they're like interactive buttons, right? So now when I click on Voila, it'll take us to the deployment stage, which is this. See? Now what Voila does exactly is take away all the code cells from your notebook. It keeps just the markdown cells and the output cells. So that's why you would have noticed that I haven't printed out anything in the middle, because if I print that out, वो यहाँ पे भी दिखेगा. But I don't want anything like that. I just want this, which is what I've displayed at the end, right? So that's it. Voila just takes away your code cells and just keeps the output and the markdown cells. So this was markdown. I hope everyone knows that, right? So this is our prototype, which is classify office characters, and let's see if this works. So we upload from wherever you want, right? And we click on classify, Michael, probability 88%. Let's try some other image. Let's see if Dwight works. Classify 99%. Let's try Jim. Haven't tried. 99%, right? So I hope you guys understood this. And we're back at our PPT. Thank you for listening. And I'm here for all your doubts, and you can connect with me on these handles at these links, at these IDs. Right? Yeah, I'm done. If anyone has any doubts, we can take that.
Can you just share the code in the group so that we can practice this out, this demo thing and all?
Yeah, sure. I'll share this entire Paperspace notebook, sorry, Jupyter folder. So you get the entire FastAI book as well as my notebooks, right?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let's stop this. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything else to say? Have you guys understood what I was trying to show and why you should start reading and studying about fast AI? Also, Amandeep has shared a feedback form in the chat, and you have to fill the form to receive the certificate for the session.
I had a small doubt.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Um, I actually found a disadvantage of using the FastAI library. Actually, in the first part of the session, it was discussed that one of the drawbacks of deep learning is that sometimes it is difficult to explain AI.
Okay,
So
yeah.
the fast AI library, I think, is quite doesn't have the
Unexplainable.
details. So it's
Right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so
So remember in one of my initial slides, I mentioned how it has all levels of API. And I used just the high level API today, which was the learner, CNN learner, since I didn't create the neural network from scratch. So you can use FastAI to create a model in 5 lines of code, which I did for you guys because it's just an introduction. Or you can use like 100 lines of code to create the same neural network. So if you actually go through the session, the course of FastAI, you'll see that in the first 2 sessions, Jeremy makes you create a simple model that I've done for you guys here. And then in about the fourth session, he goes into the depth. He helps you write down every single function of the neural network, which is starting from forward propagation, back propagation, gradient descent, creating the entire neural network architecture, seeing what it learns at every single stage. So remember how Amandeep mentioned that in face recognition, we create the first layer that's able to see like lines, and in the second layer, it's able to see something like eyes and nose, and in the third layer, it's able to see faces. So far in FastAI, there are functions. In fact, when he makes you write it, he makes you see what this particular layer of the neural network is learning. He helps you see how it's learning a line here and it's learning an eye here or a nose here. And that's actually derived from this famous paper that was published. That was when like CNNs were revolutionized, when everyone realized what all a neural network can do. And exactly how it's presented in that paper, the visualization, you can do that in FastAI and you can create everything from scratch. I hope that answers your question.
yes, thank you. That was a nice answer.
Great, you're welcome. Does anyone else have anything to say? Thank you, Varsha. You're most welcome. Amandeep, you there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm done. We can have the debate right now if everyone's up for it.
Yeah. So, guys, can we have a debate session? Like, you can just give your views on the two topics that we have chosen. So, if you guys wanna go for that, please write a +1 so we can start the debate session if you guys want it.
I don't think people want it.
No problem. Maybe you can conclude, Muskan.
Okay, so we would like to thank you guys for being here. We were very nervous if people would show up or not. So thank you for showing up. And it means a lot to us. Thank you for appreciating our efforts. And we hope you guys learned something new and interesting, and it helps you in your learning.
Thank you so much, Dee.
You're most welcome. I think that's it from our side, guys. Thanks for being here. Bye. Good night.
Muskan, can you please share the Jupyter link in the group?
It's there. There's a paper space link since it's a paper space
Yeah,
notebook.
that's not yeah.
Is it working?
Okay. Yeah, it's working. Um, that thing that you mentioned, no, that it will come in the Jupyter form, it won't come in here.
Okay, then you'll have to run it because
Okay.
it's shared as a static instance.
Then I have to run it on the Google Colab, I guess. Huh?
No, you can run it on paper space.
Okay. I'll try this one. Thank you so much. Huh?
You're welcome.
I think, Muskan, you can now stop the recording and I
Huh,
think you can end the session now.
right.